Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to COASTER-net Update. We've got some breaking news tonight out of Toledo, Ohio, where the new CEO of Cedar Fair Entertainment, Richard Zimmerman, gave a very interesting interview to the Toledo Blade today that they published. And a few interesting comments were made. Danny, there's a lot of the same stuff that you would expect, him talking about his new role, where he was. He was at King's Dominion, under Paramount, moved up through the system. He's a theme park guy through and through. A lot of that. So if you want to learn about the new CEO, I would definitely suggest you go read this article. There's a lot of backstory there. But I want to jump right into this discussion today of the most interesting part.
Yeah, we learned some interesting stuff here.
Yeah, so I'm going to read you part of this here. So it gets interesting when the Toledo Blade says, and this is what the Toledo Blade writes. He says, and he, meaning Zimmerman, plans to focus on growth opportunities, mostly at 4 of the company's parks: Cedar Point, Carowinds, Knott's Berry Farm, and California's Great America. And then they jump into a quote from Zimmerman, and I quote, "The chain has performed really well. All the parks have done well, but those 4 in particular have helped drive our business." Now, Danny, the first thing that jumps to my mind is those are not the 4 highest attended parks.
No, those aren't the 4 big boys. You know, the 4 big boys, as we have known, have always been Knott's Berry Farm, Cedar Point, Canada's Wonderland, and then Kings Island in terms of attendance. And, Canada's Wonderland wasn't mentioned in there, and neither was Kings Island. No. So that's a little bit interesting because, there's all these rumors flying about what might be going to Kings Island next, and there's been talk of a Giga Coaster for many, many years at Kings Island, and it would seem that this information given out is that maybe Kings Island is not the place that they are going to continue to expand, but instead, California's Great America we've been talking about, and, Carowinds, it looks like they're getting another big attraction in 2019. So, why don't you share your thoughts on this, but then we'll go maybe quickly park by park and what I think this kind of means for each of the parks mentioned.
Well, I think the bottom line here is, though, even though Zimmerman doesn't talk about growth in his quote, the fact that the Toledo Blade talked about growth in the previous sentence leads me to believe that this was a larger discussion.
That's what they're talking about here.
That's what they're talking about, that there's a larger discussion being had between the Blade and Zimmerman, and this is where this quote was representative of this overall discussion that they had, that you can't quote everything in a news article. So we know stock markets, we know Wall Street. Wall Street is not happy if you stay the same. And my thesis has been that Kings Island, when they put in big rides over the last few years, that they have not grown. They have not shown significant growth. When Fury 325 went into Carowinds jumped over the 3 million mark.
Carowinds did big numbers the year Fury 325 opened. We know that.
Numbers. When Kings Island put in Banshee, we looked up the numbers right here, Danny. Kings Island in 2013 had 3,206,000 in attendance. The next year that Banshee opened, Kings Island had 3,238,000 in attendance, for a total of 32,000 people extra walk through that gate.
That's nothing. You should increase that just with a little bit of marketing for year over year. I mean, honestly, that's not good at all, especially for, a $20+ million attraction. That is not, from Dreams to Screams years ago about Outlaw Run, we heard Joel Manby talk about how he's looking for 10% EBITDA, year over year. And that is, you're looking for more than that if you're getting a B&M inverted coaster compared to a wood coaster. That is not a success in terms of a new attraction. And we don't know the numbers for Mystic Timbers yet, but that'll remain.
They weren't good.
We've heard. Yeah, we've heard that they've had growth, but the problem is you have Winterfest to consider. Yeah. So it's really hard to gauge whether or not Mystic Timbers is the factor of growth there, because it may not be the factor for attendance growth. And
because you add an entire month to the season, you're obviously, so we may never know the actual impact of Mystic Timbers because The where we get these numbers from is the T group, TEA, the theme parks and the
Yep, the TS, yep.
yeah. So we get these numbers from them, which they're not official numbers because the parks don't release official numbers. But this is a pretty major group in the theme park industry, so we have to assume that these numbers are within the realm.
They're within reason, and within some margin of human error. But relatively speaking, I mean, that's still not good, even if it's not an official number. But what this tells me is that, like you said, Banshee did not do the performance that they were expecting in terms of the amount of guests that were coming through the gate. And then when you look at parks like King's Dominion is a little weird because they didn't really do anything big for a number of years. So it's kind of hard to tell, why maybe that's not in there. But when you look at Cedar Point, as you've said before, Cedar Point's not in a big city. They're nearby Cleveland. They're nearby Detroit. They're nearby Toledo. They're trying to draw from Chicago, but they're not in a big city. They need to constantly expand and constantly build new attractions to keep people coming back to Sandusky, Ohio. Because I got news for you. People don't go to Sandusky, Ohio just to have a weekend and say, you know what? Oh, Cedar Point's there. Maybe we could go there. So as my light's flickering, I had an idea. So anyway, I'm out on my outdoor porch here because it's finally nice out here, and the overhead light is flickering. Maybe we're onto something here, Andy. but so that's Cedar Point. Knott's Berry Farm. We've always talked about, year-round park, heavy, probably after Orlando, the second most competitive theme park market, certainly in the United States, with Universal Hollywood, Six Flags Magic Mountain, Disneyland. You've got SeaWorld San Diego, down just about an hour and a half south. You've got, a couple of boardwalk parks in that area. You've got family parks like Adventure City. And, Scandia is also in that area as well. You've got such a heavy market that you need to constantly expand. And that's been our criticism of Knott's over the last several years, leading up to the hang time investment, which we think could be a very good move for them. That they needed to put something in, and how the Wild Mouse attraction wasn't what they really needed to try and stay competitive. And, Voyage to the Iron Reef might have missed the mark in a year where you had Twisted Colossus opening up, an hour up the road at Magic Mountain. So, Knott's Berry Farm needs to expand in the same way Cedar Point does, not for the same reasons as Cedar Point is, because it's in that Los Angeles, Anaheim, San Diego, Southern California market, but because they need to stay competitive with everybody else, which is the exact opposite of what Cedar Point is trying to do.
I feel like the goal of Knott's is just to pull people away for a day from Disney. You have the
right down the street from them, and you're kind of going for the same demographic. You've got some thrills, but you're mainly a family park for the most part.
And they seem to have done well with the expansion of like Ghost Town Alive, with that kind of thing, with the different events throughout the year, kind of what Disney does with the Food and Wine Festival. They have started with the Boysenberry Festival, so they need to invest there, and the rides help, but it's also those other things that they need to focus on how to spend money, maybe not on rides, but in other attractions, other things. So they're going to put money into the park. It might not be in rides, though, which is the weird part.
Maybe not all the time. Knott's is in an interesting position because they are kind of in the middle of the city. So, they're kind of landlocked in a way similar to how Disneyland is. So they both face some of the same problems. So they kind of need to get creative when they put in these new attractions. Personally, I think removing the Vekoma Boomerang and putting in a Gerstlauer Infinity Coaster is a major upgrade. Yes. And I really hope that we see some attendance growth from Knott's Berry Farm, and we see the positive ramifications of Hang Time's installation, because that means we're probably going to get maybe similar attractions at some of the other parks. And, you and I rode Monster. Monster is such a fantastic ride, and if Hang Time is even close to what Monster is, then it's going to be a huge hit. The other two parks that they talk about here, Carowinds, like we said already, Rob Decker in the Fury from Dreams to Screams documentary said that they were very pleased with the lift in attendance they got from Intimidator, and then how it sustained, and they saw that again when they installed Fury 325. So unlike Kings Island, we're seeing the growth from Carowinds. Charlotte in general, I think, is a bigger market than Cincinnati. And quite honestly, there's less competition there. In the Cincinnati market, you're not that far from Cedar Point. The Columbus market is kind of split, even though you're dipping two hands into the same bucket kind of with Columbus. But Cincinnati is, a medium-sized city. But you've got Kentucky Kingdom, you've got Holiday World, you've got Six Flags Great America, you've got places like Indiana Beach.
Yeah.
I mean, there's other things within strike. You've even got, Kennywood out there in Pittsburgh. So, you've got other things within striking range, whereas, in Charlotte, the next closest thing is Six Flags Over Georgia, 4 hours away in Atlanta, and Dollywood, 4 hours away in Pigeon Forge.
Or Kings Dominion.
And Kings Dominion, and that's a perfect segue. We've seen the cross promotion between Cedar Point and Kings Island for years, and I can't tell you how many times standing in line at Twisted Timbers, about a month ago, how many people were asking about Carowinds or telling us that they were planning to go to Carowinds and they wanted to go ride Fury, and they were asking how Fury. Our ideas ran out. So they were asking about what's Fury like compared to Intimidator, because a lot of Virginia folks planning to go to Carowinds with that Cedar Fair Platinum Pass, and they've started to do that cross promotion and try and dip in to that DC Richmond market that has always been Kings Dominion. And I think Cedar Fair is trying to reach out further into the marketplace and spread their umbrella and spread their reach a little bit farther with their parks, which I think is a very good idea. And you help the Platinum Pass sales, you help that helps, and any more season pass. So Carowinds already has a very large season pass market. So I think if you can turn some of those season passes, those gold passes, into platinum passes and get people to go cross park, they're going to buy food, they're going to buy merchandise, especially if, people from Kings Dominion are going down to Carowinds for the first time. They're going to buy t-shirts, they're going to buy souvenirs, they're going to buy your souvenir cups that are good for the whole season. You're going to get some extra money there, and you're going to get more people through the gate. Do you have thoughts on that before I talk about Great America?
Yeah, because I think the whole point is testing a market until you hit the point of saturation. That going back to Kings Island,
exactly.
Looking at these numbers, I feel that they've hit saturation. And at some point, every park needs to invest in order to maintain numbers, because people get bored of a place. They're like, oh, they haven't built anything here in such a long time. I'm going to stop going. There's no reason for me to go. So you still need to invest over time.
Sure.
So, but that's just to maintain the numbers that you have. But I think the issue is that Cedar Fair is looking at these four parks and saying, we have not hit the point of saturation yet. That when you look at Carowinds, it jumped for Fury. They're going to test it with possibly this new coaster in 2019 to see if it jumps even more. Cedar Point, they're constantly trying to test it more and more. And Cedar Point, they're even pushing into new markets where he also, the Toledo Blade also makes it a point to say how Cedar Point's really trying to further the Chicago market, a market that they've dabbled in the past. I've lived in Chicago my whole life. I've heard a handful of Cedar Point commercials, mainly with Valraven, now a lot with Steel Vengeance, and before that, it's dabbling here and there. Well, supposedly they're trying to hit real hard, the Chicago market, trying to see how far past saturation can you go till you get to that point. The same thing, with Knott's Berry, that they feel that there's opportunities for growth there. And then segueing into the last park here with California's Great America, this is the roll of the dice in my book. This is to me, what they're doing there is essentially putting Fury in at Carowinds. That's a gamble. You don't know if Fury's going to top 3 million. You don't know if that's going to happen. It did, and it's sustained that, but you don't know if California's Great America, you're going to have that same scenario. And I think what they're gambling on is the San Francisco 49ers.
I think that's part of it. And I think and we don't know the numbers for California's Great America because I don't think we've seen them. But that tells me that Gold Striker had enough of an impact that they were willing to take another gamble on Great America, especially with the whole 49ers thing and the fact that they're trying to develop that into more than just an amusement park. Railblazer, I think, is maybe the test here. And if Railblazer sees a decent amount, then maybe they're going big. We hear about this 200-foot coaster. Maybe that's already a done deal. And they're all in here like they were with Carowinds. Carowinds, it was, $50 million over the course of 3 to 4 seasons. And Fury was the centerpiece of that. The water park was another. That's kind of what they're gambling on. And again, that San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose, Santa Clara, that's a large market. Even Sacramento. Sacramento doesn't really have anything. So that Northern California market is a big, big market to draw from. And really, your only big competition is Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. And with Six Flags Discovery Kingdom having that height restriction at 150 feet, that leaves a lot of opportunity for California's Great America to go bigger, taller, faster with different attractions that Discovery Kingdom literally cannot do. Yeah. And, Discovery Kingdom has the animal side of things, and they're sort of a different type of park. Great America isn't really competing with like a Gilroy Gardens or a Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk. That's not really their competition. You're mainly competing with Discovery Kingdom. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if we again see the cross-promotion come to play where you start to cross-promote Knott's Berry Farm and California's Great America. They're a little bit further apart than Carowinds, Kings Dominion, or Cedar Point and Kings Island, but I would not be surprised to see that as part of the plan moving forward, the 5-year plan, to start reaching out to get people outside of their market and to double dip into their second closest Cedar Park. I really think that's part of the strategy here.
Well, and I think at the end of the day, this is not to say that other places are just going to be long forgotten. That we already know that Cedar Fair is investing in Canada's Wonderland for next year. Now the question is, how much more are they going to invest? Maybe that's a test case to see how well the dive coaster does, and then how much more investment they need to do.
Well, maybe they're seeing if that market's saturated. We've Guardian, Leviathan, and even going back to Behemoth. There were some good increases with those rides, but let's see what happens when you put in another big roller coaster. Leviathan was 2012, Guardian was 2014. Guardian, sort of more of a family ride, I think, more than a thrill attraction, I think, is kind of what they were going for there. So this would be the first big thrill, roller coaster, really, since Leviathan. So it'll be interesting to see if that Toronto market has saturated, which is huge, and there's very, very little competition in the Toronto market. So maybe they don't have to invest every year, every other year to keep the attendance numbers up because there's nowhere else to go. Yeah. I remember at the ACE event, you hear about how you have Universal and Disney, and those are destination parks. And then you have parks like your Worlds of Funds and Dorney Parks and King's Dominions. And he specifically talked about those parks, and he called them regional parks. Cedar Point and Canada's Wonderland are what Cedar Fair calls quasi-destinations or super regional parks, because they're kind of in that weird in-between where they're sort of a national destination, but they're not quite what you think of when you think of a destination like a Disney or Universal. The Busch Gardens and the SeaWorld parks kind of get classified as quasi-destination or super regional parks because they're a little bit – there's people outside of the Washington, D.C., Richmond area going to Busch Gardens Williamsburg on the regular. There's people going to Busch Gardens Tampa outside of Florida. That's just the way it is. So that's kind of where they're at there. But without the competition and with it being a major city, Canada's Wonderland doesn't maybe need the constant investment over every other year to keep people coming back.
Well, and I think that's the name of the game right here is growth. And where can Cedar Fair invest money and see the biggest return on that money, not only in 1 year, because it's nice to get a spike in 1 year, but over many years.
You need to sustain that growth as Carowinds has.
Yeah, and I think that's the name of the game, and I'm not trying to hurt people's feelings here. I'm not trying to, explain why Kings Island is not going to get a giga, but right now, Cedar Fair has other priorities where they can make a lot of money, and if they put a giga at Kings Island in 2019, Well, that's $24 million that they're investing there that may or may not make an impact, where I can take that $24 million, put it in California's Great America, and see an impact for the next 4 years that would essentially pay for a giga at Kings Island, in 4 or 5 years from now. I'm not saying Kings Island's not going to get a giga. I think they eventually will down the road. I don't think it's going to happen until 2021, like I've said in the past.
Mhm.
I see that these other
That's a long-term project. That's not a next year or maybe even the year after. And again, we've talked about this, knowing that Carowinds is kind of locked in, or at least it seems like they're locked in, and Canada's Wonderland, for all intents and purposes, is locked in. There's already track there for a B&M next year.
Yeah.
I don't see a third big investment. Maybe you'll get a small coaster somewhere, like a wood coaster at a Cedar Point. We've talked about that.
We saw 4 investments this year. We saw Cedar Point get the big RMC. Twisted Timbers is a smaller ride. Hang Time is a smaller ride. And Railblazer is a smaller ride. So you see 1 big one and 3 small ones. Next year, we're going to see 1 big one, maybe or 2 medium-sized ones. I don't even know how to classify the dive.
Well, if Valraven was $15 million, like people say, then that would kind of put, if that's what Canada's Wonderland is doing, that would kind of put it on par with what we would expect of some of the RMCs anyways. And then you could still do 2 other rides. You could do a Mac launch and maybe
the Mac coaster's the expensive one. Maybe that's the big ride. Because a double launch, Maverick was pretty pricey, over $20 million, I believe. Would the Mac double launch not be just as expensive? So maybe that's the expensive one, and the dive coaster's the cheaper one. And maybe you see 1 or 2 other little things going in. Maybe another Gerstlauer somewhere. Maybe who knows with the RMC stuff. Maybe another single rail somewhere. But I think that this is the plan moving forward. That these are the 4 parks to watch. And this is where we're going to see the major investment over the next few years.
Yeah, I think so. There's reading between the lines here, there's a lot to digest in all this information. I think we did a pretty good job of assessing that. So we'll see what people have to say about this.
We will keep you updated. Man, this has been a crazy week already. So
it has a lot of big stuff this week, and we're gonna have a lot of time because I'm off to Iowa in about in about 10 hours, I'm on a plane to Iowa for work for the rest of the week. So we'll have we'll be talking plenty while I'm in the hotel room at night for sure.
So as always, thank you for joining us here on COASTER-net Update. I'm, of course, Andrew Barczyk from Chicago, Illinois.
And Danny Miller from Binghamton, New York.
And as always, ride on, Ride Warriors.
Take care, guys.